Today we are going to look about what exactly inflammatory bowel disease means. Upon completion of this topic, students shall be able to describe the etiology and pathogenesis of inflammatory bowel diseases. Along with that, they can name the signs and symptoms of the disease, they can mention the complications of the disease, and they can suggest what is the appropriate diagnosis and treatment for inflammatory bowel diseases. Now, inflammatory bowel diseases, it is also commonly known as IBD. Now, what is inflammatory bowel disease? It is a disorder that involves chronic inflammation of the digestive tract. Also, here occurs inappropriate mucosal immune activation. Now, this is our digestive tract. The IBD, some form of disease of IBD, it can occur right from your mouth, oral cavity, mucous membrane of your oral cavity to the mucous membrane of your anus. But another type of IBD, it only occurs in this particular part of your intestine. These disorders, they can occur at any stage of life, but most commonly they are said to occur in between 20s and 30s age of years. There is increased incidence and it is suggested to occur due to improved food storage and changes in the gut flora. It is very common in the Western world, and in Asia, its occurrence is very low. But nowadays in Asia also, the patients who are suffering from IBD, their count is increasing. Now we'll take a look about types of IBD. IBD is basically divided into two types of disorders. The first one is ulcerative colitis. Now what is ulcerative colitis? It is nothing but it is inflammation of the rectum and the colon part of the GIT. Particularly this part is affected. Now, it is going to affect only the mucosa and the submucosa. Ulcerative colitis is more common in females as compared to males. Now, for example, this is your healthy mucosa of your GIT. When a person is suffering from ulcerative colitis, at that time, you can see here there is ulceration within the mucosa. But these ulcerations, they are not so deeper and they are superficial. They can extend only up to mucosa and submucosa. They do not penetrate into the deeper tissues. Now, the second form of IBD is Crohn's disease or renal enteritis. Crohn's disease is the inflammation of the lining of the digestive tract and can affect any part of the GIT, right from your mouth to your anus. And it is transmural, that is, the ulcerations caused due to Crohn's disease, they are much deeper. Now, the IBD, it occurs due to first reason is alteration in the host interaction with the intestinal microbiota. Secondly, due to intestinal epithelial dysfunction, aberrant mucosal immune responses, and altered gut microbiota composition. Etiology, first reason is genetics. If in your family you have increased incidence of members who are suffering from IBD, then there are sure chances that you might too suffer from IBD. In Crohn's disease, there is 50% concordance rate in monozygotic twins and 15% in case of ulcerative colitis. That is, if one offspring of the monozygotic twin is suffering from Crohn's disease, then there is 50% chance that the other offspring will too suffer from ulcerative colitis. Crohn's disease. And if one offspring of the monozygotic twins is suffering from ulcerative colitis, then there is only 15% chance that the another one will also suffer from ulcerative colitis. In case of dizygotic twins, it is less common and the rate is less than 10% for both forms of the IBD. Now, we'll take a look at the second cause, and that is mucosal responses. Defective regulation of the immune suppression. In a normal individual, there is a lack of immune responsiveness to dietary antigens and commensal flora in the intestinal lumen. The mechanism which is responsible for this is by activation of the CD4 and T cells secreting cytokines inhibitory to inflammation, which suppress the inflammation of the gut. So we can say these are the protective chemicals which are released by the body, and hence our body it do not show inflammation. But now what is happening in case of IBD? This immune mechanism of suppression of inflammation is defective, and thus it results in uncontrolled inflammation. Now the second thing is type of inflammatory cell. In both types of the IBD, you can find CD4 and T cells present in the lamina propria and in the peripheral blood. These cells either activate other inflammatory cells, for example, macrophage and beta cells, or they recruit more inflammatory cells by stimulation of homing receptors on leukocytes and vascular endothelium. There are two main types of CD4 plus T cells in IBD. The first one is Th1 cells, and these are responsible for secretion of pro-inflammatory cytokines, tissue necrosis factor, and interleukin factor alpha. It is responsible for inducing transmural granulomatous inflammation, which is seen mostly in case of Crohn's disease. Interleukin 12 initiates Th1 cytokine pathway. The second type of cell is Th2 cells, and these are responsible for secretion of IL-4, IL-5, and IL-13. It induces superficial mucosal inflammation, which is mostly seen in ulcerative colitis. The third factor is exogenous factors. It includes the microbiota. Many microbial species are suspected to have a role in IBD. Second one cause is physiological, psychological factors. It has been observed that individuals who are unduly sensitive are dependent on others and unable to express themselves, or they are suffering from major life events such as illness or death in the family, divorce, interpersonal conflicts, etc., suffer from irritable colon or have exacerbation of symptoms. The third reason is smoking. The role of smoking in causation of Crohn's disease has been reported. The person who smokes, they are more prone to Crohn's disease. Oral contraceptives. There is increased risk to develop Crohn's disease with long-term use of oral contraceptives, and it has been proved. So, a genetically predisposed person, he might get acted upon two factors and he might fall prone to IBD. The first factor, it can be exogenous factor, and the second factor, it can be endogenous factor. Now we'll take a closer look about both the forms of diseases. The first we are going to see is ulcerative colitis. Now ulcerative colitis, it is closely related with the Crohn's disease, and it is limited only to colon and rectum. Now you can keep in mind that ulcerative colitis, it starts with C. So you can say it is limited only to the colon and the end part of the GIT. It is nothing but it is inflammatory disease of the mucosa and submucosa layers of the colon and rectum. Basically, this ulcerative colitis, it starts from the rectum, then it moves to the sigmoid colon, and it can progress further to entirely engage the descending colon. It can move further to the transverse colon, and sometimes may involve the entire colon. Now, depending on which part of the colon is affected, of the GIT is affected, there are 5 types of ulcerative colitis. The first is proctitis. In proctitis, it is a very mildest form, and you can see rectal bleeding is the only sign. You have to keep in mind that in proctitis, only this end part of the GIT is suffering from ulcerative colitis, or it is suffering from inflammation. The second thing is proctosigmoiditis. Here you can see the end part of the rectum as well as the half part of sigmoidal colon is inflamed. In this case, there is urge to poop, but it never happens. And in this patients, you can observe bloody diarrhea. This patient suffers from cramps and pain. The third type is distal colitis. In this case, you can see the lower part of your rectum as well as the whole of the sigmoidal colon is involved, or it is inflamed. In this case, there occur pains only at one side. The pain is observed by the patient on the left side. There is bloody diarrhea and there is weight loss without any try. The next type is pancolitis. It is the severe bouts of bloody diarrhea. There are belly cramps, pain, fatigue, and there is major weight loss. In this case, entire of the colon part is inflated. Then the last one is extensive colitis. Here only the inflammation is seen from rectum to sigmoidal colon and to transverse colon. It is characterized by severe pain, heavy diarrhea, bleeding, and fever. Now we'll take a look towards the pathogenesis. As we can say, it is an immune system. In this case, the immune system, it is going to make a mistake. The immune system thinks that the food, the gut bacteria, and the cells which lines the mucosa, they are intruders. Thus, the WBCs, they attack the mucosa and cause inflammation and ulcers. So, the inflammation of the lining kills the cells, causing ulcers and ultimately bleeding and production of pus. The inflammation causes the colon to empty frequently, causing diarrhea. So this is the pathogenesis. Some environmental factors cause immune system to malfunction in susceptible individuals, and thus the immune system starts attacking the healthy tissues, causing ulcers. It leads to multiple ulceration. Then there occurs diffuse inflammation and desquamation or shedding of the colonic epithelia. There occurs bleeding, heavy bleeding, and mucosa becomes edematous, inflamed, abscess forms, and infiltration is seen in mucosa and submucosa. Disease begins in the rectum and spreads to involve entire colon. The ball narrows, shortens, thickens because of mucosal hypertrophy and fat deposition. Now we'll see the morphology. The mucosa is going to show superficial and linear ulcers. It does not penetrate the mucosal layer. There is intact mucosa and which forms pseudopolyps. The mucosal layer it thickens, which ultimately shows narrowing effect on the colon. The clinical features, they are in the form of flare-ups, that is on and off symptoms. The first symptom is there is bloody diarrhea and severe pain. There is passage of mucus and pus through the feces. There is extensive abdominal pain. There is anorexia. There is weight loss. There is fever. There is vomiting and dehydration. There might occur pain in the joints. The one more feature which is characteristic to this disorder is there is eye pain on watching towards the light, and the patient might suffer from anemia because of the blood loss through the feces. Now the diagnosis is based first of all on hypotension. The patient suffers from hypotension, then he might suffer from tachycardia. There is fever. The blood test is done to diagnose if the person is suffering from anemia. There can occur dehydration and hence the nutritional status is checked. The stool samples are detected for occulted blood. One technique of diagnosing ulcerative colitis is sigmoidoscopy. Here the doctor look at the lower part of the colon. They are going to put a bendable tube into the lower colon through your bottom. The tube, it has got a small light and camera on one end. The doctor might also use a small tool to take out a piece of the lining of the lower colon. This is called biopsy. The doctor in a lab will look at the sample under a microscope. The next diagnosis is based on colonoscopy. It is the same process as flexible sigmoidoscopy, only your doctor will look at your whole colon and not just only the rectal part. The treatment involves mostly ulcerative colitis. It has to make a person feel better, to give time for the colon for healing, and to prevent the flare-ups. So the treatment has to be aimed at these three particular points. So it can be done using changes in the diet, drug therapy, and surgery. Now, what changes you can do in the diet? Some foods like spicy food or food which is high in fiber, they bothers the person. So you have to avoid eating fibrous and spicy food. So go for soft and bland food. If a patient is lactose intolerance, then you have to stop dairy products, you have to stop smoking, and you have to ban cold products as they increase the motility. A balanced diet with plenty of fiber, lean protein, fruits, and veggies should provide enough vitamins and nutrients. The person he should take in plenty of water to avoid the dehydration. Also, he must go for electrolyte restoration, ions, vitamin supplements, and most importantly, parenteral nutrition may also be recommended. Now, the drug therapy involves antibiotics, which are used to fight the infection and allow the colon to heal. Aminosalicylates fight infection and helps control symptoms. Corticosteroids, these are given for severe symptoms. When the antibiotics, they cannot, when the aminosalicylates, they cannot stop the pain. At that time, corticosteroids are recommended. Immunomodulators, they stop the immune system's attack, and loperamide, it slows or it helps in halting the diarrhea. You can also go for surgery. If the other treatments they are not working, then surgery is recommended. You can remove the colon, which is called as colectomy, or colon and rectum, which is known as protocolectomy. In case of protocolectomy, doctor might make a small pouch out of small intestine and attach it to the anus, and this is called as ileal pouch anal anastomosis, IPAA. The complications include: first, there is bleeding which might lead to anemia. The blood is excreted through the feces. Next, there might occur osteoporosis because of poor diet or use of corticosteroids. The third thing is dehydration. If the large intestine it fails to absorb water, then the person suffers from dehydration. Inflammation is not just seen on the intestine lining, but it can also be observed on the skin, bones, eyes, joints, etc. There is fulminant colitis. In case of very severe ulcerative colitis, the colon may burst and the infection might spread to all the body parts through the blood. The next is megacolon. It is fulminant colon and can swell or burst the large intestine. And lastly, there can occur colon cancer. There is a higher risk in the patients who are suffering from ulcerative colitis to develop colon cancer. Now we'll take a look at Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease is nothing but it is the chronic inflammatory bowel disease, and it is characterized by inflammation of the digestive or your GIT tract. It can affect any part of the GIT starting from the mouth to the anus. It is commonly found at the end of the small intestine, that is your ileum and colon. therapy provides relief from the symptoms. There is no perfect medical cure for this disorder. It starts in early life. Mostly it starts at the age of less than 15, and it is and this inflammation is very severe and it spreads in the deeper tissues. There is increased permeability of the mucous membrane. This may lead to increased passage of the luminal antigens, which induce cell-mediated inflammatory response. This results in the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines such as interleukin-2 and tissue necrosis factor, which coordinate local and systemic inflammation, and it occurs in genetically determined persons and increases permeability. The symptoms can range from mild to severe and come up suddenly. There might be some periods where there is no symptom or there is no sign, and this period is called as remission. So what are the signs and symptoms of chronic disease? First, the person is suffering from diarrhea. He is also suffering from fever. There is abdominal pain and cramping. There is fatigue. There is blood in the stools. There are mouth sores. There is reduced appetite and weight loss. There is inflammation of the skin, eyes, and joints. Now we will see what are the complications. The first complication is bowel obstruction. The intestinal wall, it is altered due to the scarring, and due to this scarring, the lumen, it gets narrowed, and ultimately it blocks the flow of the bowels, and hence it is going to cause severe pain to the patient. And due to this bowel obstruction, the patient might feel anorexic. He might suffer from nausea and vomiting. Secondly, there develop ulcers. There might occur formation of fistulas. Sometimes the ulcer, they extend completely through the intestinal wall and create a fistula. Now, what is a fistula? Fistula is an abnormal connection between different body parts. Next, there can occur anal fissures. This is nothing but a small tear in the tissue that lines the anus or the skin around the anus, where infections can occur. Next, there might occur malnutrition. Now, the malnutrition is a result of diarrhea, abdominal pain, and cramping, which makes the person to eat less, and hence he might suffer from malnutrition. And lastly, there might occur colon cancer. Now, what are the diagnostic tools which are used? The first one, the doctor is going to ask you about your personal and family history. He might go for blood testing. These tests are done to detect if the person is suffering from anemia or any kind of infection. Then the fecal matter is observed for occulted blood. The doctor might recommend colonoscopy. In colonoscopy, a thin, flexible, lighted tube with camera is used for examining the entire colon. Sometimes small piece of the intestine might be taken for biopsy. Next, the doctor can perform CT scan for examination of the entire bowel, and also MRIs can be used for evaluating the fistulas. The treatment involves use of anti-inflammatory drugs, corticosteroids, immune system suppressors like azathioprine, infliximab, methotrexate. It also includes use of some antibiotics, painkillers, antidiarrheal agents, iron supplements, vitamin B12, calcium, and vitamin D supplements. And also you can suggest nutritional therapy and surgery. So this was all about inflammatory bowel diseases. Thank you.